everyone, and welcome to this video focusing on African American civil rights during the years 1968 to 1992. So 1968 marks the year that Martin Luther King was assassinated, and after his death, the activism side of civil rights started to die down as they lacked a charismatic leader, so all of the groups just generally declined, and the Black Panther Party, which was the growing and more popular party, was targeted by the FBI, so they declined after 1969. So now looking at political rights by 1992. African Americans had de jure equal voting rights thanks to the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and by 1992 there were over 8,000 African Americans in public office, so there was a real positive change. However, political involvement doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be better and improved conditions for African Americans. Now looking at segregation in education. Racial violence and public segregation had largely ended by 1992, and 76% of African Americans were now graduating high school, which was only 6% less than white people. However, they were still only half as likely as whites to graduate college and higher education, and de facto segregation continued as many African Americans continued to live in the separate and lower standard neighborhoods because white people would just move away or refuse to allow them to live there. Also, 23% of African American men were in prison or on some form of probation or parole, so the police system was still continuing to discriminate and overly arrest African American men. In terms of economic position by 1992, there was an expanding African American middle class, and almost 40% of black families fit into that middle class description. However, there was still disproportionately high unemployment, as African Americans were double the national average unemployment rate, and the economic gap within African Americans widened, as well as the economic gap between black and white people. And this is known as bifurcation, where there's a growing gap between the middle class and the impoverished underclass. Also, a third of African Americans were still living below the poverty line. So overall, despite having de jure equal rights, de facto African Americans still faced a discriminating and oppressive system. And finally, the Rodney King affair in 1992 at the end of this period. Rodney King was arrested and beaten up brutally by police for drink driving and speeding, but this was caught on camera, which was the first time that police brutality was actually caught on camera and massively spread around throughout the country. The police were charged but were found not guilty by an all-white jury, so this sparked massive riots across Los Angeles and America, where over 50 people were killed and $1 billion worth of damage was done to property. So this all shows that police brutality and racism within the American justice system hasn't changed much since 1865, as the American system continues to treat black lives as if they're worth less than white lives.